Hi, I'm Bayless, and I've been exploring, cooking, and eating in Mexico for over 40 years. Now I'm taking you to Mexico City for a deep dive into the classic dishes you've asked to learn. It's time to share my best recipes ever. Tamales have a sort of split personality. When you say tamales to a home cook, they'll immediately think about a celebration because you make tamales for a big celebration. But it can also be a sort of pedestrian breakfast or a snack in the evening for the people who eat their main meal, as they do here in Mexico, in the middle of the afternoon. And tamales come in all different shapes and sizes and wrappers and fillings. What I've got right in front of me is a central style tamal because I'm here in Mexico City, and I've brought you to a place called Teresita's. It's in a really out of the way neighborhood in Mexico City because they make what I think are iconic central style tamales. And what makes it iconic? Well, number one, there is the corn husk wrapper. Secondly, it's made with really coarse ground masa, and the masa is beaten and beaten with the fresh rendered pork lard until it's really light and fluffy. So these come out with just this incredible texture. There are four main varieties that you'll find here. This one has tomatillo sauce and chicken, but I have the other three right over here. One of my favorites is filled with rajas of chile poblano. So that's strips of poblano chili with some tomato. This has mushrooms in it, and a little piece of cheese goes in there. Mole and chicken, of course. And then this one, the pink one, is really one of my favorites. It's sweet. Sometimes it has pineapple in it. This one doesn't. But what I really love about it is that really light and elegant texture. And then when you eat it, it's the perfect balance of sweet and savory. Now, a lot of the people that are eating tamales for breakfast are buying them from street vendors, just like what I've got right here behind me. But these are very special tamales. These are made in the Chiapas style. It's similar to what you might find in Oaxaca, meaning that it's wrapped in a banana leaf and steamed. And the masa is not that coarse ground, super light stuff. These are almost pudding-like, made from a very smoothly ground corn masa. And then this one, this classic Chiapas one, it has mole in it, and an olive, and a whole prune. There's chicken inside here, some roasted red pepper, which is classic in that part of Mexico as well. But her stuff is so good. I have to show you two more tamales. Excelente, muchas gracias. So now we are into sweeter territory here. I've got one that's made from fresh corn, what they call a tamal de elote here. Now, when you think of fresh corn in the States, we think of sweet corn. This is not sweet corn. This is field corn that's picked at an immature stage that they call the milk stage. So they are usually going to add a little bit of sugar to it to bring out its natural sweetness. You'll notice that this one was done in a corn husk, but it's not done in the dried corn husk. Because it's made with fresh corn, they just keep the husk from the fresh corn and use that as a wrapper for it. I really love them, and they're only just a little tiny bit sweet. Okay, this one It's called Tamal de Café. She created this for a big gastronomic festival at one of the culinary schools here. And when the judges tasted her sweet coffee tamal, they flipped. And they gave her a huge award for it because this tamal doesn't really exist anywhere else. So I brought you to this beautiful restaurant to show you that tamales can even go upscale. Well, upscale and downscale at the same time. You'll understand in just a minute. So this restaurant is called Pasillo de Humo, and it's a Oaxacan-inspired restaurant in Mexico City. And what I have in front of me is called a tamal de siete cueros, or 7-layer tamal. Now this tamal is actually one of the most ancient in Mexico. It dates back to pre-Columbian times when they didn't have any fat to mix in with the masa to make their tamal dough. So what they did is exactly what's in the plate in front of me here. They put down leaves of herby hoja santa, that big heart-shaped leaf with the anise-like flavor that they use so much in Oaxaca. And then they would smear on a layer of tortilla dough, cover that with a thin layer of smooth black beans, and then roll the whole thing up jelly roll style and steam it. But you can see what I have in front of me looks incredibly modern, like what Chef Alan Mendez does here at Pasillo de Humo. It's sliced and beautifully presented with some plantain and some of these pea tendrils over the top of it, all on a mirror, as they would say here in Mexico, of the famous black mole from Oaxaca. It couldn't be any more beautiful, any more modern looking. Now, there's one thing that all of those delicious steaming tamales have in common, and that is that they are cooked in some kind of a wrapper. Now, in the United States, we think that all tamales are done in corn husks, but that's only the beginning of the story here in Mexico. And by the way, look at these corn husks. They don't look like the ones that we typically get in the United States. Ours are always cut off right here, so they're flat on the bottom. These, they leave the entire form, so it forms a little cup at the bottom, making the preparation of the tamales just way, way easier. But in Mexico, you move right away into the hoja de plátano, the banana leaves. And here in most Mexican markets, you can find them in two different forms. Either the roasted ones, making them more pliable, or the fresh ones that you would take home and steam or roast yourself. But in other parts of Mexico, you can actually find other leaves, like the famous hoja santa from the southern part of Mexico. It's the large leaf herb with that anise-like flavor. It makes the most delicious tamal wrapper. So the first thing when you're going to make homemade tamales is that you've got to make the fillings. And one of the most classic fillings for tamales is pork cooked in red chili sauce. And I'm going to use guajillo chilies. These may look a little bit like the chilies that you associate with the Southwest, but their flavor is a little bit more concentrated, a little bit tangier. That's why they pair so beautifully with pork, because the pork is rich against the tanginess of the guajillo. So it's a smooth skinned chili, and the first thing that you do is to cut the top of it off like that, and then split down the side and open them up. Now you want to make sure that you get all of the seeds, or most of the seeds, out. We're going to strain this mixture in a minute. I'm going to go through tearing each one of these chilies into sort of small flat pieces for easy blending. Pour in about 3 cups of water and then make a smooth puree out of that. Once it's smooth, pour it into a pot through a medium mash strainer to catch any stray seeds or tough guajillo skins that didn't get fully blended. Then add 3 cups of water. I have some cut up pork shoulder here. You could buy stewing pork for that, and a few cloves of garlic. I'm just gonna put those right into the pot with the sauce. I need to add a teaspoon of salt to this, so for me that's 2 really big pinches here. And then we've got classic flavorings that go with a pork and red chili stew. That would be black pepper and cumin seeds. And grind those up. Grinding fresh spices really makes a world of difference in the flavor of the finished dish. This is going to go into the pot with the pork, garlic, red chili mixture. I'm going to turn on the fire to bring this to a boil, and once it comes to a boil, I'll reduce the temperature and let it simmer for about an hour or so, or until that pork is fall apart tender. The classic tamal filling with chicken is made with tomatillo sauce. So I've taken the papery husks off of the tomatillos and laid them out on a baking sheet. I've got some serrano chilies over here, some garlic that still has its papery husk on it. I'm gonna put these under the broiler, very close up under the broiler, and let them roast for about 6 minutes on one side, flip everything over, and then let it roast for about 6 minutes on the other side. Now once those come out of the broiler and have cooled off completely, take the garlic out of their papery skins and put them into a blender jar. Remove the stems from the serrano chilies and put them into the blender jar as well, along with those roasted tomatillos, making sure to keep all that delicious juice. Add a handful of cilantro and blend it all until it's smooth. Film a pan that's over medium-high heat with a little bit of oil. And when it's hot, pour in the tomatillo mixture to sear in all that flavor. Continue to stir it as it reduces and concentrates. It'll take about 5 or 6 minutes to become the consistency of tomato paste. Now, chicken broth goes in here. And then after this is simmered for a half an hour or so for all the flavors to come together and for it to reduce a little bit, I'm gonna season it with salt, cool it off, and I'm going to mix it in to the meat that I've pulled off of a rotisserie chicken. Now on to the wrappers. In the United States, this is what corn husks look like. They don't have that deep cup like the ones that I showed you in Mexico. These are cut off straight, but they all need to be rehydrated. So I'm gonna put the dry corn husks in a large bowl and then cover them with hot tap water. I like to put a plate on the top of it just to keep them submerged so that they rehydrate evenly. Now let's talk about banana leaves. The most accessible banana leaves to us in the United States are going to come frozen, and they're going to be in 1 pound packages. I usually just cut the top of it off and then slide the banana leaves out. Now unfold the banana leaves and cut them into about 12-inch squares. Then slice off the tougher edge that had connected them to the main stalk. That will make them a whole lot easier to fold. Now to make these more tender, you have 2 options. One is to put them in a steamer and steam them for about 20 minutes, and that will soften them up completely. But when I only have a few of them to do, what I like to do is to turn on a fire and then lay your banana leaf on the top of it and just run it slowly over. You'll see that the oils will come to the top and make the leaf shiny. You'll also notice that it'll become much, much softer. Now we have the wrappers prepared, so it's time to make the batter. First thing that we have to talk about when we're talking about the batter for tamales is the masa that we're going to be using. Of course, widely available, you can find a powdered mix that is basically the masa that's been dried out completely and pulverized. Now, the tortilleria that I work with here in Chicago make this meal every day for making tamales, which is dry and crumbly and quite coarse compared to the masa for making tortillas. Second ingredient is lard, and you have to get fresh rendered pork lard. That's what's going to give you really, really good flavor. If you buy an inferior quality lard, especially one that's hydrogenated, well, it's a little bit like buying margarine when you really want the flavor of butter. Scrape the lard into a mixing bowl. It's best if you can start with it slightly chilled. Add a teaspoon and a half of baking powder and a couple of teaspoons of salt. Then mix that all together. Then it's time to add the masa. First, add just a portion and mix it until it's completely incorporated. Then continue to add and mix in small additions until you've used up all the masa. Finally, slowly dribble in some chicken broth until your batter is the consistency of a thick cake batter. This is the traditional Mexican tamal steamer. You can see that there's an indention here, so the water goes in the bottom part of it, and then this indention supports a perforated rack that goes in, and you've got plenty of room here for steaming the tamales standing up. You could use any kind of steamer that you can find. The problem with a lot of the Chinese steamers that a lot of people have is that they don't have very much depth, and you need to stand these ones wrapped in corn husks up. So I've put the water in here. I'm going to put the support in here, but before I do that, I'm going to put a coin in the bottom of it. That will move around as the water is boiling underneath, and it will let us know when the water runs out, because the sound of the coin jumping around will stop. So put this support in place, and then I have some of the banana leaves that I didn't use or that are not the right size, so I'm going to line the bottom of this perforated support here with the banana leaves. And then I have this piece of doubled up foil, which I'm going to use as a sort of divider in here because I'm making two different styles of tamales. And I want to make sure that the ones that are in corn husks stand up straight. So I'm going to put this in like that. Okay. Now this is ready to receive the tamales. So let's start forming them. So with one of these big corn husks, it's easy to work with the largest ones in front of you. Scoop up some of the tamal masa onto the middle of the corn husk and then spread it into a rectangle. I will take a portion of the chicken, it's only a little less than a couple of tablespoons, with its sauce and put that in the middle like that. Now, you want to envelop or encase that filling with the tamal masa. So you bring the two sides up together so that it touches together there, and then roll this around the outside of it like that. And then where it ends, you're going to flip that up. And then you have a formed, finished tamal. But I like to secure this, so I've torn some of the corn husk into small strips here. And I'm going to lay this down and give it a little tie, just to keep it all secure. Not too tight. And now I'm going to continue forming and filling tamales. Now on to making the banana leaf ones. And I like to work with the the less shiny side up like that, and the striations in it or the grain going that direction. I'm going to scoop up some of our prepared masa. Make your rectangle about 2/3 of the length of this banana leaf and in the middle third of it. Then we'll take our pork filling. After it had simmered for a while and the pork was completely tender, I just used a couple of forks to break the meat up. And we'll take a portion of that. This stuff is so delicious with the guajillo chiles in it. And put that right in the middle there. So then I'm going to cover that filling with this side by just simply flipping it up and over like that. Give it just a gentle press. Top third comes down, and then the two sides come in like that. Again, to do a little tie to keep everything in place, I've torn up some of the banana leaf, and I'm going to lay the finished tamal in the middle and then do a very gentle tie. Again, not too tight. So I'm going to start putting them in their place. I don't like to steam more than 3 high because I think it just doesn't steam evenly. Now on to making more. Okay, the top goes on. I'm going to put it over high heat so that that water comes to a boil really quickly. Then I'm going to reduce the heat to about a medium so that the water is at a continuous boil and I can hear that coin dancing around in there. And then in about an hour and 15 minutes, these should be done. I'll show you how to tell. The aroma in the kitchen when you're steaming tamales is really incredible. So let's see if these are done now. I'm going to pull one of them out. Remember, you're working with steam here, so it can be very, very hot, deceptively hot. So I'll pull off the little tie here, open it up. Typically, when you're serving tamales, you'll just set the steamer out and let people help themselves, or perhaps pile them on a big platter, but you want to eat tamales when they're really piping hot. But say you've gone to all this work and you kind of want to dress it up and you want to make your tamales into something special that you could serve at the table. Well, let me show you an idea for a presentation for a tamal like this. I've got some Mexican crema here. You could spoon some Mexican crema over the top of it. That'll really dress it up. Maybe you want to put some salsa on here too, but I'm just going to do a little bit of queso fresco. Now, we could use this tie and tie it like that for an even more beautiful presentation. And now we'll go on to the banana leaf wrapped tamales here. Oh, look at that. That's really, really beautiful. I've got another dish here that I could do a single serving in, and I'll fold it under on those two sides, pick it up. I'll lay that into this sort of deep plate. Okay. I've got a little bit of a red chili salsa here, which I think would be really good with this. This one's made with roasted tomatillos, so there'll be some beautiful brightness to it. And then a few little leaves of cilantro over the top. And there you have a beautiful presentation for a banana leaf wrapped tamal. Okay, so I fired up your appetite. Some of my favorite dishes, entertaining tips, and Mexican travel inspirations. Well, now I want to hear what you have to say. Visit us at rickbayless.com/TV for recipes and a whole lot more.